Welcome back, deep divers. Today we're tackling a real head-scratcher, one that's been stumping mathematicians for over a century.
A problem with $1 million prize on its head, I might add.
That's right, we're talking about the Riemann hypothesis.
Now, we've got some excellent sources to help us navigate this mathematical maze, excerpts from a book dedicated to the Riemann hypothesis, and a biographical dictionary of mathematicians.
So before we get lost in a sea of numbers, let's set the stage.
It all begins with prime numbers, those numbers that are only divisible by 1 in themselves.
Like 2, 3, 5, 7, and so on.
Exactly. They might seem simple enough, but the way they're distributed along the number line is anything but straightforward.
Yeah, they always felt kind of random to me, like someone just sprinkled them across the number line haphazardly.
You're not alone. A lot of people think that, but that unpredictability is part of what makes them so fascinating to mathematicians.
I guess that makes sense. So tell me, why are prime numbers so important in the grand scheme of things?
Well, think of them as the building blocks of all other numbers.
Oh, I see. Because every number can be broken down into a unique product of prime numbers.
You got it. That's why understanding how prime numbers are distributed is like trying to understand the basic structure of all numbers.
Wow, that's pretty deep. So how do mathematicians even begin to study something as complex as the distribution of prime numbers?
Well, one powerful tool is the Riemann zeta function.
Uh-oh, here come the big words. Can you break that down for me? And for our listeners who might not be mathematicians.
It's basically a mathematical formula that uses complex numbers to analyze the distribution of primes.
Complex numbers. Now, those were always a head-scratcher for me back in school.
Right. They involve this thing called the imaginary unit, denoted as I, which is the square root of -1.
Yeah, that always seemed kind of like a mathematical magic trick to me.
I know what you mean. But just like the concept of negative numbers might have seemed strange at first, complex numbers expand our mathematical toolkit, allowing us to explore a whole new dimension of mathematical possibilities.
So they help us see patterns we wouldn't be able to see otherwise.
Precisely. The Riemann zeta function, by incorporating complex numbers, reveals deeper connections and patterns within the seemingly random distribution of prime numbers.
Fascinating. So how does all of this connect to the Riemann hypothesis itself?
The Riemann hypothesis makes a bold claim about where certain special points, called zeros, of the Riemann zeta function are located.
Located, as in where they are on the number line.
Well, not exactly on the number line, since we're dealing with complex numbers which have both a real and an imaginary part.
Right, because of that pesky I, the square root of -1. So where are they located then?
Think of it like this. Imagine the Riemann zeta function as a three-dimensional landscape with peaks and valleys. The zeros of the function are the points where the landscape dips down to sea level.
Okay, I can picture that.
The Riemann hypothesis states that all of these non-trivial zeros, which have, let's say, interesting properties that distinguish them from other zeros, all lie along a single vertical line in this complex plane. Mathematicians call this line the critical line.
So all these special dips in the 3D landscape are perfectly lined up along this critical line. Has anyone actually found evidence to support this?
There's a lot of evidence pointing in that direction. Our book mentions Andrew Odlyzko, a mathematician who calculated millions of these zeros and found that they all do indeed lie on the critical line.
So we've got millions of these zeros lining up perfectly, but that still doesn't prove the hypothesis itself.
Not definitively, no. It's like finding a trail of footprints that all lead in the same direction, but you haven't actually found the person who made them.
Okay, that's a great analogy.
Yeah.
But even if we can't definitively prove the Riemann hypothesis, why is it so important?
Well, for starters, it's a fundamental question about the structure of numbers themselves, which has implications for many other areas of mathematics. Plus, there's a $1 million prize on the line for whoever solves it.
Wow, talk about high stakes. So we've got prime numbers, complex numbers, zeta functions, and even a $1 million prize. Where do we go from here?
Well, let's dive into some of the attempts to prove the Riemann hypothesis and see what insights they've yielded. For instance, our biographical dictionary tells us about Brian Connery.
Oh, he was the guy who tried to tackle the twin primes conjecture in high school, right?
That's him. He's gone on to become a leading expert on the Riemann hypothesis. He actually spent a decade exploring an approach that ultimately led to a dead end.
A decade? That's dedication. So what about other approaches?
Well, our book mentions Louis de Branche, a mathematician who already has a major mathematical victory under his belt, proving the Bieberbach conjecture, which was another notoriously difficult problem.
So he's not afraid of a challenge. What's his strategy for tackling the Riemann hypothesis?
He's been searching for a special mathematical tool, what mathematicians call an operator, that would transform a known function so that its zeros align with the critical line. It's a highly specialized area of mathematics, and he's encountered quite a few roadblocks along the way.
It sounds incredibly complex. While DeBrains focuses on finding that special tool, are there other mathematicians taking different approaches?
Absolutely. Our book also talks about Michael Berry and John Keating, who are bringing some unexpected ideas from the world of quantum physics into the mix.
Quantum physics and prime numbers. Now that's an interesting combination. Tell me more.
They're using a concept called random matrices to analyze the distribution of the Riemann zeros, looking for connections between the seemingly chaotic world of quantum physics and the seemingly ordered world of mathematics.
So they're using the physics of chaos to try and find order within prime numbers. That's mind-blowing. But with all these different approaches, do mathematicians think the Riemann hypothesis will ever actually be proven?
That's a question that has haunted mathematicians for over a century.
It really is the million-dollar question, isn't it? But before we try to answer that, let's step back for a moment. What are the broader implications of this research, even if the Riemann hypothesis remains unsolved?
Even if we never find the definitive answer, the journey itself is incredibly valuable. Think of all the new mathematical tools and concepts that have emerged from attempts to prove it.
You're right, the pursuit of knowledge is just as important as the destination. And the Riemann hypothesis has definitely sparked a lot of groundbreaking research. But we've covered a lot of ground already. Prime numbers, complex numbers, zeta functions, and even quantum physics.
We've taken a deep dive, that's for sure, but there's still so much more to explore. The human stories behind this mathematical quest, the potential applications of the Riemann hypothesis, and the tantalizing possibility that the key to unlocking this mystery might lie in some seemingly unrelated field.
Now that's an intriguing thought. Maybe the answer lies with a physicist, a computer scientist, or even, who knows, a musician.
Exactly. The beauty of the Riemann hypothesis is that it reminds us that knowledge is interconnected, and sometimes the most unexpected connections lead to the most profound discoveries.
Well, we've definitely got our work cut out for us, deep divers.
Get ready for part 2, where we delve deeper into the history and the human stories behind this mathematical enigma.
And explore how this seemingly abstract problem might have real-world implications. Stay tuned.
You know, one thing that struck me while reading our book was this sense of awe, almost reverence, that mathematicians have for the Riemann hypothesis.
Yeah, the book describes it as this holy grail of mathematics. It really does seem to hold a special place in the hearts and minds of mathematicians, doesn't it?
It's like they're not just trying to solve a problem, they're trying to unlock a fundamental secret of the universe. And that's what makes it so compelling, even for those of us who aren't, mathematical geniuses.
Definitely. I mean, I'm fascinated by it, but I have to admit, there are parts of this book where I just get completely lost.
Yeah.
Like when they start talking about the Riemann zeta function and all its mathematical glory.
I hear you. There's this one quote from the book that really resonated with me. It says that trying to explain some of these mathematical concepts to a non-mathematician is like trying to describe color to someone who's been blind since birth.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a powerful image. It makes you realize how much of our understanding of the world is based on things we take for granted, like our ability to see color or grasp abstract mathematical concepts.
Right. So how do mathematicians even begin to wrap their heads around these incredible abstract ideas?
I guess they must develop some kind of intuition, right? A way of seeing patterns and relationships that goes beyond just crunching numbers.
Absolutely. Our book describes it as a kind of sixth sense, a mathematical intuition that allows them to navigate these complex landscapes of thought.
It's like they can see things that the rest of us can't even imagine. But I'm curious, how do they even communicate these ideas to each other? Do they have, like, a secret mathematical language?
Well, they do use highly specialized language and symbols, but the book emphasizes the importance of visual aids and metaphors, like that image we talked about earlier, the Riemann zeta function as a 3D landscape with dips and peaks.
Yeah, that definitely helped me picture it. Those dips, or zeros, being the points where the landscape touches sea level. It makes it seem a little less abstract,
Exactly. It's a way of bridging the gap between the highly abstract and the more concrete.
Our book also delves into the history of attempts to prove the Riemann hypothesis, which, as we know, has been a long and winding road. There's this one story about David Hilbert, a famous mathematician, who was asked what he would do if he could wake up 500 years in the future.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. What was his answer?
He said the first thing he'd do is ask if anyone had proven the Riemann hypothesis.
That's amazing. It shows just how deeply this problem has captivated mathematicians for generations.
But have there been any close calls? Any mathematicians who thought they had a proof, only to have it fall apart?
Oh, yeah, plenty. The book mentions quite a few cases where mathematicians thought they had cracked the code only to discover a flaw in their logic.
Ouch. That must be heartbreaking. To spend years, maybe even decades, working on a problem, only to realize you're back at square one.
I know, it's like climbing a mountain, and just when you think you've reached the summit, you realize there's another peak hidden behind it.
But even with all the setbacks, mathematicians keep coming back to this problem, don't they?
They do. It's like this irresistible siren song, calling them to explore its depths, even if it means facing disappointment and frustration along the way.
And I guess that speaks to the enduring power of the Riemann hypothesis. It's not just about finding an answer, it's about the journey, the struggle, the pursuit of something that may be ultimately unattainable.
Right. And who knows, maybe that pursuit will lead to something even more valuable than the answer itself.
Like what?
New mathematical tools, new insights into the nature of numbers, maybe even applications in fields like cryptography or physics that we can't even imagine yet.
Wow, that's really thought-provoking. So even if the Riemann hypothesis remains unsolved, its legacy will continue to shape the landscape of mathematics for generations to come.
Absolutely. And that's what's so fascinating about this whole deep dive, isn't it? We're not just exploring a mathematical problem. We're exploring the very nature of human curiosity, our relentless pursuit of knowledge, and our desire to understand the universe's hidden order.
It's a reminder that even in the face of seemingly impossible challenges, the human spirit keeps searching, keeps striving, keeps reaching for the stars.
You know, it's funny when you think about it, the Riemann hypothesis, it's this incredibly abstract mathematical problem, but it's sparked so much research and creativity.
Yeah, and not just in mathematics either.
Right.
Our book mentions connections to physics, computer science, even music,
It's like this puzzle with infinite layers. The more you peel back, the more you realize how much you don't know.
which I guess is kind of the point of doing a deep dive, isn't it? To push the boundaries of our own understanding, even if we never find all the answers.
Exactly. And the Riemann hypothesis, it's a perfect example of that. It's a problem that forces us to think outside the box, to question our assumptions, and to be open to new possibilities.
Our book even suggests that the key to unlocking this mystery might lie in some seemingly unrelated field, like maybe a breakthrough in quantum physics, will suddenly illuminate something about the distribution of prime numbers.
Wouldn't that be amazing? To think that the answer has been hiding in plain sight all along, just waiting for someone to connect the dots.
It kind of makes you want to go back to school and study everything, doesn't it? Just in case you might stumble upon the missing piece of the puzzle.
Well, I don't know about going back to school, but I definitely feel inspired to keep learning and exploring, keep that curiosity alive.
Me too. And I think that's a great takeaway for our listeners, isn't it? Even if you don't understand all the technical details of the Riemann hypothesis, it's a reminder that there's always more to discover, always new connections to be made.
And that the pursuit of knowledge, it's a journey worth taking, even if the destination remains elusive.
So to all our deep divers out there, keep questioning, keep exploring, and who knows, maybe someday one of you will be the one to finally crack the code of the Riemann hypothesis.
And if not, well, at least we'll have had a fascinating journey along the way, right?
Absolutely. This deep dive has been a wild ride through the world of prime numbers, complex numbers, zeta functions, and even quantum physics.
But more than that, it's been a journey into the heart of human curiosity and our endless quest to understand the universe's hidden order.
So until our next deep dive, keep those brains buzzing and never stop exploring the fascinating world of mathematics and beyond.
And remember, the Riemann hypothesis might still be out there waiting for someone to unlock its secrets.
Maybe that someone is you.